In this video, I'm answering your questions from the comments section on my YouTube channel. From how to work at National Geographic to my best tips for portrait photography. I've picked some of the best comments and questions from this past month. Let's see, has your comment been featured? Hi, my name is Sean Gallagher. If you're new to my channel, welcome. And thanks to those of you who are regular viewers of the channel. So many of you have been sending me messages and comments on my channel this month, which I really appreciate. So I wanted to take this chance and take a little bit of extra time in this video to give those comments and questions the time they deserve and give you a full response to some of the best questions and comments. So I've picked out 10 of the best and the most interesting, so keep watching to see if I featured your comment and learn about some of the things that people have been asking this month. Okay, let's get started with the first comment. Okay, this first comment is from Francisco Granadero 604. And he commented on my video about environmental portraits. That was a video I did a while ago about how to use environmental portraiture to make storytelling images about people. So he's got actually two questions, a two-part question. The first one was, what sort of lighting scheme do you use with your environmental portraits? He says, I was surprised to see that on many of your environmental portraits, you use flash. Yeah, good observation. On many of my environmental portraits, I do really like to use flash. Now, when I first started doing environmental portraits, I didn't actually use flash at all. I just relied on natural light. One of my first portrait series was about the nomads of the Tibetan Plateau, which you'll see on screen right now. And you can see in these images, in these portraits, I wasn't using any flash at all. I was just working with natural light. And to be honest, most of the time, I really like to work with natural light. But over the years, I've kind of gravitated towards using flash photography. So in my latest project, for example, about plastic pollution in Bali, you'll see in these portraits, they're a little bit brighter, and you can probably start to notice that I have started to use a little bit of flash. And that's just a simple off-camera flash setup. So I've got a little radio transmitter on the hot shoe, and I've got one simple off-camera flash, which for me is a speed light, a Canon speed light. Using flash doesn't create another barrier with a photographer or the photographed person. Yeah, that's another good point, because when you have the flash there, it is pumping out that flash towards them. And to be honest, most people don't really like having a flash going off around them. So the main thing to do, or main thing to pay attention to in that particular situation, is to work relatively quickly, because I don't want to be there for a really, really long time, firing that flash in people's faces over and over and over again. So if you are using a flash for your flash photography, then work purposefully, work relatively quickly. Try to figure out, before you start taking pictures, figure out what that framing is that you want. What are you looking for in that picture, so that you can take relatively few pictures if you're using the flash. Now, of course, if you're not using the flash, if you prefer natural light, then you probably give your subject a bit more time to work with them. So it really depends on you, the photographer, and whether you prefer to use natural light or flash when you're making your portraits. Both work, but both can be utilized in different situations. Okay, before we go on to the next comment, I just wanted to let you know I have a brand new photography course titled The Photographer's Eye, From Beginner to Confident Image Maker. On the course, there are almost 7 hours of video classes, and each chapter focuses in on some of the most important factors of photography that I feel every photographer needs to know. I've distilled 20 years of experience down into this course to give you a structured plan with assignments. We have class group chats, and it's all designed to help you build a foundation for your photography. Just click the link in the description to learn more and claim your exclusive discounts. Okay, this question came in on one of my most recent videos about photography competitions and whether you should be entering them. And this question came through from Pragyaner TW4MG. And he said, thanks, just in time video. Was trying to submit for street photography competition. Any idea about this? I'm new to photography, starting late, mainly wildlife and some day-to-day common things. Okay, that's interesting. The one thing that I take away from this comment, Pragyaner, was that you want to submit to a street photography composition, but you mainly do wildlife and day-to-day common things. So the point there really is to make sure that you are entering a competition that is really directly related to your type of photography. So if you do street photography, there's not much point in entering a wildlife competition and vice versa. So when you are looking at that photography competition that you want to enter, pay special attention to the overall theme of the competition. Pay special attention to the categories within that competition and make sure that your type of photography, and especially the photos that you're entering, really fit within the theme of that competition. That's a really important point because you don't want to waste your time and you don't want to waste your money and your effort in entering these competitions. And that's something that I talked about in the video. So pay close and special attention to exactly the theme of the competition and whether your type of photography really suits that particular competition. Now on the same video, I got this next comment, and this comment was from VZ Shadow 1. And they say, I'm retired and photography is my main hobby. I enter 4 to 5 photography competitions per year. That's quite a lot for amateur photography. They're all run by local groups, photography clubs, art centres. They have modest entry fees and fees that go to support local organisations. Okay, why do I enter? To grow as a photographer. Trying to compete in these competitions makes me makes me better, and may lead to me having bragging rights over my buddies. Okay, these are pretty good reasons to enter a photography competition. My main takeaway from this is that you're not taking them too seriously, which is another thing that I touched upon in the original video, was about the emotional cost of entering these competitions. You know, you put a lot of time, a lot of effort into entering them, and a lot of photographers take them very seriously. But it seems that you're taking a more light approach to entering these. And I think this is good because it takes the pressure off you when you're entering them. And if you happen to get recognized in the competition, it sounds like it would be a nice bonus, but it's not the main thing. And actually your point about getting bragging rights over your buddies, your friends, that's also fairly healthy. You know, none of you are taking it too seriously. You're just keeping it friendly, social, and it's part of a hobby that it sounds like you all enjoy and all enjoy together. And for amateur photographers, I think that's one of the most important things, is having that community of other like-minded people who enjoy photography and also don't take it too seriously and just love doing it for the fun of it. And if you happen to, from time to time, get placed in a local competition, it's a nice bonus, but it's not the end of the world if you don't. So that's a really good approach to thinking about photography competitions. This next comment came in on one of my short videos that I've been publishing recently about my project earlier this year about Bali's plastic crisis. And this was a comment from Chris1777. He said, when you photograph a scene like that, would you use composition rules or just the scene and the environment? Okay, so Chris was commenting on one of these behind the scenes videos I have showing me as I'm taking photos. So I like to mount a GoPro on my camera or mount it somewhere close by and record myself as I'm making pictures, just to give you an idea of how I make my photographs. So in those situations, yes, I'm using those rules of composition that I talk about in many of my other videos. Because when I'm making individual photographs, I'm using those ideas of composition to try to make images that are as compelling as possible. And to do that, one of the things that you need is great composition. And so, having practiced all these techniques for years, I'm actually not thinking about them specifically as I'm taking the photo, but those ideas and rules and concepts of composition are going into every single image that I make. So yes, I'm looking at the overall scene to take the picture, but I'm also thinking about how can I use composition to make the most interesting frame that draws you into that image and makes you care about the scene that I'm photographing. So that's how I use composition to make interesting frames, but also draw you into the story. Now, there was another comment on one of my other short videos from Bali, and this was from JT Snaps Photography. And they said, "Hi Sean, it's really sad to see this, but I'm happy you're documenting it for the world to see and bring awareness. I just want you to know your work is inspiring in many ways. Thank you. As a fellow photographer, I'm learning about storytelling, documenting more than just images. Your style is unique. Any advice on telling stories through images? I'd be happy to learn your skill." Okay, well, telling stories with images is what a photojournalist does, and it's what we try to do every time that we go out to take pictures. Now, most amateur photographers tend to focus in on just making interesting and impactful single images. But for a photojournalist and a documentary storyteller, we're looking to go beyond just taking single images. Now, of course, we want to make compelling single images, but it's how we put those single images together to start to tell a story. So there are different ways that you can do this. There's the classic photo essay, for example, where you're taking images of a story and each image shows the viewer something different. It might be something as simple as a wide shot, a medium shot, a tight shot, details compared to the wide shot. That starts to create that variety in your images that starts to create something like a photo story. Or you might take a different approach, which is the photo series approach. So in Bali, I made a photo series about some of the pollution on the beach. Often it was the fish that were surrounded by plastic. So I decided to make a photo series telling the story through a kind of a repeated scene. So you had different things within the frame, but they were repeated in different places. And so that's the slightly more modern, more contemporary way of telling stories. So these are some of the different ways that you can tell stories with your photographs, but essentially it's about moving beyond just the single image and thinking about how multiple images, when they're put together, can start to tell stories. So once you start to think like that and start to change your way of thinking about photography, it will take your storytelling to a new level. And actually, this is something that I cover in a chapter on my new photography course, where I try to introduce the idea about starting to tell stories with images. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in learning about storytelling with your photography, make sure to check that out via the link in the description. Now, in this comment on one of my other Bali videos, this was one of the longer form behind the scenes videos, Mahi Does said, "Thank you for sharing. I really like the way you explain the photo and take the photo in the best angle to represent the issue. We're eagerly awaiting for your final image selection process and explaining how do you select the final images." Okay, that's an interesting point. So they're referring to how, when you're out in the field taking images, you're obviously taking a lot of photos. Now, professional photographers are no different from amateur photographers. We take lots of pictures when we're out and about shooting. But one of the secrets is to be able to look at, say, 100 photos of a similar scene and to pick out just the best photo. And so that's a skill in itself. That's the editing skill that professional photographers have. It's that ability to look at a lot of different images, maybe some that are quite similar, and being able to pick out the best. Now, the best way to explain how I do this is actually on my new photography course, where I have a whole chapter dedicated to revealing how I choose my images from my photo shoots. But I'll give you a sneak peek. Basically, it comes down for looking for those special moments. And it's that special combination of the light, of the composition, and the moment within a photograph. So if you're looking at a scene where you have lots of images that are very, very similar, you're looking for that tiny detail. And that detail might come down to a moment. It might be the way that the light is falling in one particular frame, or it might be that special composition that you're able to get in one of those images. It's that little secret something that appears in just one of those images. And it normally comes down to either the light, the composition, or the moment. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, check out the link in the description. Have a look at my course where, like I said, I've got a whole chapter dedicated to my whole workflow, and I can give you some more tips about how I choose the best photos from a shoot. Okay, on the same video, Ann Taylor V82 asks, it's hard to believe that anyone would want to go there on holiday. That plastic completely ruins the sunset. Ann says, do you ever receive hostility from the authorities for bringing these issues to light? I can't imagine they would be very appreciative. Okay, yeah, this is a good point. I mean, when I'm going to work on some of these stories, I am highlighting issues that the local authorities probably do not want highlighted. Now, in Bali, I didn't have any specific problems with the authorities. However, I have had problems with authorities on previous projects. Probably the most notable one was when I worked on a story about deforestation in Cambodia a few years ago. And I was documenting illegal deforestation in the forests of Cambodia. And after the authorities found out about my reporting, after it was published, they even wrote about me in the national newspaper, criticizing the work and calling the work out, saying that there was no deforestation happening, which of course wasn't true. But it's part of my job as a photojournalist that sometimes I may irk authorities, people in charge, by highlighting these issues. But in a way, if that happens, then I know that I must be onto something right if I'm annoying those type of people. Obviously, it's bringing attention to the type of issues that some people don't want brought attention to. And I think that's part of the job of a photojournalist. So thanks for that question, Anne. Okay, the penultimate question came in on my video, top tips to take photos like a photojournalist. And this question came from DJ XJS. And they said, hi, I just want to ask something. What are the things to learn besides the rule of thirds and the straight line? Okay, well, those are two kind of basic composition techniques, the rule of thirds and how to use lines. Now, I've made two separate videos on both of those topics. I made a whole video about the rule of thirds, about how to use it. I'll put that up here. And I also made another video about how to use lines and all the different ways that you can use lines in your compositions. But actually, the world of composition is so fascinating, and it's a rabbit hole that we don't have time to go down into in this video. But there are so many different composition techniques, so many more beyond just rule of thirds and using lines. I made another video here, 20 composition techniques in 20 minutes, which is a really great way for you to get started in learning more about composition techniques, because composition is that hidden framework within every photograph. It's like a scaffolding, like an invisible scaffolding within a photograph, and every photograph has it. And once you learn these different techniques and once you practice them, once you start to master them, you'll actually find that they go into your subconscious. So you won't always be specifically thinking about, oh, I must use the rule of thirds. But if you've practiced them enough, they will go into your mind, and you will find that they appear naturally when you're out taking photographs. So at the beginning, when you're just a beginner photographer, yes, you will take a compositional technique and you'll go out and practice it. But after months, after years practicing these techniques, many of them will become ingrained in your mind. You'll be able to go out and use them instinctively when you're making photos. So definitely check out those videos and go down that rabbit hole of compositional techniques, because I think it's absolutely fascinating, and learning all of them will ultimately make your photographs much more interesting. Okay, finally, this comment came in on my video, 5 street photography tips. This is one of my most popular videos on my channel, and this comment came from Ethereal. How did you get jobs at Nat Geo? Did they approach you? Okay, this is a good question. Yeah, I've collaborated with National Geographic on many projects over the years. And I suppose perhaps you are an aspiring photographer. Perhaps you'd like to work with National Geographic as well. I'll give you a couple of quick tips, but make sure to check out the video that I made about working with National Geographic and how you can become a National Geographic photographer, where I give you quite a few different tips about the different ways in which you can work with National Geographic. But for me personally, when I first started working with National Geographic, I actually managed to make contact with them. So my first contact with them was through some of their photo editors who were attending photojournalism festivals. So one of the important things that I try to do from time to time is to go to photography events, photography exhibitions, photography festivals, where I know there are going to be people within the industry at those events. So it's a little bit of old school networking. You have to try to identify who the people are that you want to meet, maybe attend a portfolio review. When I went to these early photography festivals, I would take my portfolio with me, a physical portfolio of photographic prints, and show them to the editors. And once you make that connection, that human connection, it's so much better than just randomly sending people emails and trying to make contact. So if I can offer you one piece of advice, it would be to try to meet people from the organization that you want to work at, whether that's National Geographic or whether it's another editorial photography publication. Try to find out where the editors are going to be. And that's normally at the photography festivals, at the exhibitions. And then you need to make sure that you go there, show your work, that you're able to speak about your work, speak about the projects that you're working on, about your style of photography, and try to make a connection, try to make an impression with them. And then those relationships will hopefully open up those opportunities for you to work at those publications that you want to, whether that's National Geographic or any other publication. Okay, I hope these responses to your questions have been useful. Thanks so much for sending them through. Don't forget, if you have any questions you'd like answered, leave them in a comment on my videos and I may feature them in the video next month. I read all the comments that are left on my channel, so please leave a comment and I'll get back to you. Oh, and remember, if you're looking for that structured plan to improve your photography, the link to my new photography course can be found in the description below. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.